Hey friends, thanks for joining me, Jim Baroud, to hear a few insights from leaders who represent our innovation ecosystem. Today's chat is with Claudette McGowan, founder and CEO of Protexa, and Alex Hamilton, director at Quintrix.
Claudette McGowan. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Protexa. So we're a cybersecurity company, an AI-based platform that quickly helps you figure out how you've been hacked, why you've been hacked, and then we help you to remediate.
Wonderful. Alex?
My name is Alex Hamilton. I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition at Quintrix. We are a recruit, train, deploy company. That is the model that we use because we find the right people for you. We make sure that they're trained for the specific positions that you may have. We make sure they're ready day one for any job openings that you may have. In tech, that is our specialty.
Great. Thanks. All right. So you both have had really interesting backgrounds. Obviously, Claudette, I know your background because you were with TD Bank when we met years ago. So why don't you take us from actually college to where we are now?
Wow, you have that much time. Okay, awesome. So I started studying actually computer science, then moved into an arts degree, did my MBA, everything in Canada. So I am from Canada. I have an honorary doctorate from Carleton University. And now I'm actually doing a master's in computer science. Oh, I say master's, next level, PhD in computer science at a local Canadian university. But my entire career has been about helping people and enriching lives. Essentially, I wanted to be a nurse. My mother told me she was a nurse, so she had no interest in me being a nurse. And so what I do is really on the digital space, transform manual processes into automated processes. And then, of course, when you are connecting, in my 2 careers in banks, I was accountable for thousands, hundreds of thousands of pieces of hardware, like tons of software. And so when you are connecting things, you also have to be protecting things. So in my world, I went from connecting hundreds of thousands of things to now, how do you elevate protection? How do you add encryption? How do you add firewalls? How do you add training for all the humans that use those things? So my career has always been about finding the weakness, being the strength when it comes to digital spaces.
Wonderful. My mom was a nurse, so I can totally relate to that. But speaking of health and protection, I want you to digress. I know I don't want to take too much time, but you did some really important work during COVID. So can you just talk to us about that real quick?
Yeah, well, I did a lot of things during COVID, and then a lot of things I wasn't able to do. But really, we were trying to find people who were, in need. You're asking me specifically about cybersecurity, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, for those who don't know, during the pandemic, cybercrime quadrupled. That is an FBI statistic. And you had regular people who used to work in the 4 walls of a company that had all the security, all the protections, and then they all went to work from home. And so that elevated the risk. Cyber criminals were fascinated by the fact that, hey, people are at home, they don't have the right controls. And so you see an elevated level of phishing attacks. So the emails, the SMS texts, you'd also see things like business email compromise. And so what we were able to do is to work with different organizations and countries to build a program that would train thousands of people to not only be cyber literate themselves and elevate their hygiene, but also to get employed into cybersecurity roles. So we are working with different organizations, training thousands of people and putting them in this, innovation economy. Because right now there are 3.5 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs worldwide, and we're building the cyber soldiers for the future.
Wow. And you also did something with PPP, right? Or materials, right?
Yeah, we were helping connect, organizations who needed product. So it was a big issue that there was, especially in some of the islands, they didn't have access to things. So I was able to work with some US companies and make those connections and get product to, islands in the Caribbean that you would never imagine would have a difficult time, just getting the basics, masks, you name it.
Right. Great. Well, thank you for your service. All right, Alex, it's hard to follow up from that, but talk to us.
I'm going to take a pass. No. So my past is I'm a New York boy, born and raised, still live in the New York area in Jersey City. Went to NYU, studied computer science as well, and became an entrepreneur. not too long after that. And once you get that bug, it just kind of keeps going. It's like an infection that you can't get rid of, right? And I had a company just before I joined Quintrix, and we actually had a patented invention that we made. We wound up selling that. I wound up knowing the actual co-founder of Quintrix, because we lived in the same building. And he said, well, you're an entrepreneur. Can you give me some tips on how this whole thing works? And maybe I need to raise money, or maybe I need to, figure out how to get my name out there, what's going on. And at first it started off as just sort of an advisory role, and we would meet once a week, and then it started expanding. And eventually he was like, well, what are you doing right now? And I was at the point where my wife was like, you need to get out of the house now. You sold your thing, move on, do the next thing, please. So that's when myself and Krishna Kumar, who's the founder of Quintrix, started really developing our relationship and what we wanted to do. I looked at a lot of his processes. In the beginning, when it's such a small company, it was 3 people in the beginning. You're sort of doing everything at the same time, right? You're trying to figure out, well, how do we create departments? What departments? It's 3 people. We've got to figure out what we're trying to do and how to do it and make it work. And that was a very, very fun time. We have grown the company, obviously, since then dramatically because of exactly what you said, Claudette, which is the demand out there, right? So there's all these open positions. I think you said, 3 million in cyber?
Yeah,
right.
3.5 million.
Even in 2019, before the pandemic really rolled in hard, I know that in IT, there was like 7.5 million open positions just in general. And then in 2020, it became like almost 15 million total. Yeah. One of the beauties of what we do with our company is, since we are a trading company as well and a recruiting company, is our model was already pandemic proof because we were doing everything online. So we actually were not really affected poorly by the pandemic. And in fact, we probably attracted more people. So it allowed us to really sort of dig in, find our niche, and really propel our business to where it is now. And again, you said something earlier that really struck a chord with me, Claudette. It's the helping of people. It's the journey. Because when I got involved with Quintrix originally, and it was literally the 3 of us in an office, it became, how are you connecting with people? What are you doing for them? How are you helping them grow their career? Because we don't want to be, position fillers. That's not what Quintrix is about. Quintrix is about nurturing early talent and making sure that it grows properly and growing a career and standing behind those individuals and being a support network for them and also being a support network for clients. But my joy is watching that journey, watching people grow, watching people mature and become young adults and grow into their roles. And full disclosure, my mother was a nurse too. So there's something in common. She worked at St. Vincent's Hospital for 35 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of
bless
crazy.
her.
No wonder we like each other.
That's right. This is a good crew. I like this.
All right.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that, Alex. Now, clearly, let's just talk about some things. Obviously, you both have experience in tech. You from big companies at first, Claudette, and Alex, you from typically startup ventures. What about lessons learned, Claudette, from your time in those big companies? Just curious, some nuggets of wisdom for those leaders out there.
Yeah, I think the big thing, especially in massive organizations, is speed. Like the one thing that you can learn from the small, nimble organizations is just not to be caught up in bureaucracy and to be fast about what you do and to always kind of check and challenge the processes in the company. I think the other thing I would say is just culture. The culture of an organization sets the tone. And there's the things on the walls, and then there's the things in the halls. And so it's really critical that you never lose sight of, connecting with the hearts and the minds of the people who work in an organization, because the organization, it's their buildings, but really how things get done is through the hearts and the minds of the people.
Wow, that's great. And let me ask you about Canadian corporate culture and U.S. culture. I think you probably have some experience with both, mostly Canadian. But I'd just be curious if that's a big difference or not.
I think, as you know, the U.S. has many states and you have many cultures and we have many provinces and territories in Canada. So I think there's some areas that really work nicely. When I was working with one bank and, they're more focused on, the Milwaukee, the Wisconsins, the Chicagos, there was a really nice harmony, I would say, with the Toronto Canadian vibe. And then there's others that perhaps maybe don't blend as well. But I think it's also about, again, the culture of the organization sometimes trumps the culture of, the geography. And if you've got these, key tenets that you follow and you live by, whether it's about trust and it's about, doing what's right and making sure that, customers at the center of everything, you find the right things happen. So I love working in organizations where we could work anywhere, in Asia, in Europe, in Africa, and at the same time, those key tenets brought everybody together. And that whole vision and mission, get the human on the moon. When you've got that big goal and everybody rallies around the big goals, the work gets done. So I didn't see major differences, I have to say, working with people in all parts of the world, especially when the mission of the organization was very, very clear.
Got it. Thanks for that. Alex, again, you mostly work with startups. Any lessons you want to share?
Well, I mean, that's what you're doing in startups, right? Every day is a lesson, basically. You're figuring out how to do things wrong so that you can figure out how to do them right, right? So, I mean, my motto was always, what's that famous line that Alec Baldwin had in Glenn Ross? Always be calling. ABC.
Closing.
Always
ABC,
be closing.
always be closing.
Always be closing.
Closing.
Mine was ABL. Always be learning.
Yes.
Because you always have to adjust to what's going on. You always have to be open-minded. You always have to listen, right? Everything starts with listening and making sure that you understand there are people who understand what you're trying to do. There are people who are better than you at what you're doing right now. Always listen to people because they're going to help you, right? And then when that happens, you can then help people too, right? So always be listening, always be helping, making sure you're doing those things that really can make an impact, because Claudette, you said something about the customer, right? And one of our, I don't want to say dilemmas here at Quintrix is we really have two customer bases, right? We have clients and we have candidates. And we need to make sure that they're both treated properly, to make sure that the candidate is nurtured and grows, so make sure that the client's needs are met at that level. And if you can do both of those at the same time, you've got the perfect scenario. So always be learning. That's my lesson.
I like that. I like that a lot. So, Claudette, back to you. Going from big companies to now a small company, tell us what that transition has been like.
Yeah, I mean, I think the transition has been a lot smoother than I expected it to be. And I had this view that, if I didn't have these big organizations behind me, the phone wouldn't ring as much, I wouldn't be invited to the cool kids parties. But I have to tell you, there's a boldness and a courageousness to saying, I'm going to try something new. And I feel that the calls are happening, the interest is happening, because what's behind that pivot? Like, how do you go from this spot to the next? And I'm learning, like back to where Alex said, every day it's something new. And so it's been a wonderful journey for me. The pace is actually more now. I work at a different pace now. I thought I was really busy before, but it's a different type of busy. It's creating. You are creating connections. You are creating opportunities. And every time you go somewhere, like when you work in an organization, here's the salary band. Here's what you can do. These are the rules. This is the box. And for me, what I find is that there's no box. There are some guidelines, but they're not hard and fast rules. And you can push the boundaries a little bit more when you're creating those rules for your organization. And then also, back to the culture, as a leader, you set the tone. And so, when you're in a company and they go, they and them, and I'm the they, I'm the them. And that really, it's a wide eye awakening kind of moment to know that if things are great, take a bow. If things are not great, take a break.
Yeah.
And Claudette, talk to us about how you found this opportunity, how did you come to this moment, and what is the company? Talk to us a bit more about the company and how it's grown.
Absolutely. So essentially there's 8 billion people living on Earth today, and 5 billion of us are online. And 50% of the 5 billion have already been compromised, already been hacked, already been breached. Mm. And then when you speak to people and say, so how do you think you're doing, James, when it comes to like 1 out of 10, what do you think your cyber hygiene is? People are like, 3, 4. I don't find a lot of people saying 8, 9, or 10. So they know it's bad, but they don't know how bad it is. And they don't know what to do about it. And so seeing this opportunity of 5 billion people online, I used to help 28 million people at a bank, but there's 5 billion people who need that same type of help. And that's why I put the shingle up, because the impact that I can have taking what I know about taking someone from a 4 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10 is massive. And it's not just for a big score. It's the implications. When you get hacked on Instagram and you lose your account and you're an influencer, you've lost your cash register.
Yeah.
When you're a hospital and you no longer have systems, you can't heal people. And we've seen a case where someone has lost their life because of a cyber attack. When you're you name it, a big box store, a retail store, and you lose access, it's devastating. And so I get those calls. And so I created this company to focus on 4 things. 1, a quick way to assess, diagnose, and help you remediate your problem. 2, training people. Because there's so many openings, you got to get more people in the field. But we also have to train everybody, every generation. Grandma has to know. Little Timmy has to know. He can't be 2 with the iPad and he could take the whole network down in the house. So training is big. The 3rd piece is consulting. You've got some of the brightest minds in cybersecurity on our team right now. People with digital forensic skills, people with expertise going through ransomware attacks. And so we're able to help companies figure it all out, make sure that they have a playbook, make sure they have a plan, make sure they know who to call. And the last piece that we do is managed services. So, your company is getting big, Alex. Maybe you don't want to hire 20 people for your cyber team. Maybe that's not your core business. Well, that's something that we can offer as well too. So managed services in cyber, someone to do your vulnerability assessment, your pen test, someone to tell you about your patching, to test your people on, are they clicking the link for phishing? We do all of that so that other companies can focus on their core business. That's what we do at Protexa.
Wow, that's great. And how big has it grown? So when did you start?
We're 40 people now. So a year ago, we were like all of 2 people, and now we're 40 people at the company. We've got tons of customers, and we're growing the customer base. But more importantly, we were VC backed. So we got some really big organizations invest in us and say, we believe that this is the future, tapping into the human side of cybersecurity. Because 90% of the time when you hear there's a breach or a hack, it came through a human.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Wow, that company's grown so fast.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Claudette. That's really amazing. And in a difficult environment, frankly, right?
Absolutely.
And that's a testament to your leadership and your reputation, right? And some obviously good offerings. So Alex, talk to us about Quintrix. How has that grown? Tell us a bit more about that story. Yeah. We know how you got started.
Right. Well, first of all, I didn't know I was going to be on this with a superhero, because literally Claudette's going to save the world and she's got to protect all these people. And I just love that message that you just delivered. I mean, it's so right on, and it's so necessary, right? And just people, like you say, there's a lack of awareness of like what is required. So that's an amazing story, amazing message. Now, how Quintrix has grown is we went from, as I mentioned, 3 people, and we now have about 20 people working for us. We do also have an overseas department as well, as far as some recruitment goes, because we didn't get VC backing, but we got basically a majority buyout, and we're now partners, or we have a parent company, and their name is Mindlance, and they are a staffing company. So they are basically, funding us as well, same way, so that we can grow our business. We can use their infrastructure. It's made a lot of that stuff a lot easier, which has been very helpful. But it also sometimes creates growing pains, right? Because then you've got 2 entities that are trying to sort of say, well, we like what you guys are doing, but do it like this. And well, we don't know if we really want to do it like that. So there's some push and pull there, which just happens naturally, fortunately or unfortunately, no matter how you look at it. But I think the point is that what we decided we were going to do and how we were going to do this company was really just getting that message out there and really trying to get in front of clients that understand, hi, I'm having a problem finding people, and I'm having a problem retaining people. And that's the biggest problem that we address, right? We talk about, well, how did Quintrix grow? It grew because the average retention rate amongst IT entry-level individuals is about 68% get through their first year. That's not a great number, right? With Quintrix, all of our candidates who graduate our programs and then take the job get through their first year at a rate of 92%. So right away, we believe that we're helping companies develop their culture, because what they really want to do to develop their culture is find young talent that they can bring in at entry-level positions. And that really tends to also trickle up. If you can bring in the right people that match your company's needs and their message and what their whole mantra is about, and they stay, that does a big job of changing a company's culture, because those individuals are then setting their own culture at that level, and they'll help the next group that comes in. And it's sort of cyclical, and you can kind of just keep it going. So when we talk about how we grew the company, the numbers are fine, but the methodology is what's so important, right? You've got to get in, you've got to communicate, know your clients, know what their needs are, help them, but then also have a way of finding the proper people to line up with what those needs are, so there's a cultural fit. And that's my favorite part of the job, right? Is when you can make those pieces work. That's when people go, oh my God, these people are like the best. These are the best 10 people we've ever hired. Can you find 10 more? Yes, we can.
And how do you think, Alex, that the partnership with Mindlands was different than if it was funded by an investor?
I think that what makes a difference is a little bit what I talked about before, is they have their systems already in place, right? So sometimes they want you to steer the boat a certain way, and you may be resisting it. Now, when we first signed the deal, they said, you guys, we're going to get out of your way. You guys do it exactly the way that you want to do it. We're not going to have any issues. And for the most part, that's absolutely been true. I'm not going to sit here and say that they've been, overbearing or telling us what we need to do all the time. Not at all. But I do think there are certain things in the way that they make their approach that's far different than ours, because they are a traditional staffing company, right? It's way different to fill positions, especially when you're dealing with mass. What we deal with is with quality, and we deal with cohorts. So when we're working with clients, we want to be able to place 10 people at a time, right? We want to graduate people from our courses and place them 10 at a time. They're used to, I've got an opening, fill this rec. It's a much different style of recruitment that we don't use. So sometimes when we speak our language, I sort of feel like they don't necessarily fully understand it, but they want to. They definitely want to, because they think that we're the future, but we have to just explain things to them sometimes. So I think it's an interesting dynamic. Listen, some of that happens with VC as well, right? Absolutely. It can still happen along those lines, but they may not be in your, we kind of have a really good idea of exactly what you do because we're in that business. Well, you're not really in the same business as us. We do things a bit differently, right? So that's some of the nuances of that, Jim. I think that's an excellent question, because there are times when it can feel like it's a hindrance, but for the most part, they do let us operate autonomously and do what we need to do.
And so, Claudette, you hear that, right? I mean, obviously you guys are venture funded, but clearly, you're always thinking about exits, right? That's got to be something in your mind. And I'm sure you'll think about that down the road at some point or sooner, right? I mean, how do you view that sort of, that question? I mean, I don't want to put you into any tough spots, but I'd be curious to get your perspective on, what the future looks like for your company.
Yeah, I should ask about how many people listen to this podcast before I answer, right? No, I'm just kidding.
Good answer.
I will give you my honest answer. Is that the reason why I left a beautiful organization and a great role was for impact. So I think we can make money doing anything, to be quite frank. But how do you prevent someone's life from being blown up because they had a weak password, or because they kept their social media profile public so someone can monitor them and watch them and exploit them? So as much as there will be a day where we're having a great exit conversation, I want to just have an impact conversation. Because if I can get to 1 billion people, if I can get 1 billion people to realize what their cyber score is, and that they have a big cyber hygiene dilemma, and they did 4 things, they can move themselves up that curve. That's where I want to put my focus on. I want people to say, hey, listen, I got hacked, but I had multi-factor authentication turned on. So they got the first level, but they couldn't get in because they didn't have the code. They didn't have the authentication 6 numbers. That's what I want to do, is get people to just think, how do we become more cyber literate? And because I'm in Canada, I want Canada to become the most cyber literate nation in the world. and then to take that and scale it. So don't worry, I'm coming to a theater near you, James and Alex, when it comes to the United States. But we got a manageable size of people here that if we really focus and got it right in this petri dish, we can take it and scale it globally.
Right.
That's great. And so I guess what you're saying is you obviously had a lot of choices. You could have gone anywhere, but in this area of cyber where it's the most impactful, right? Protecting people. That's why you chose.
Absolutely. Remember, I started off by saying I wanted to be a nurse. Don't tell my mom, but I'm an undercover nurse. I'm a digital nurse. I'm a cyber nurse. She just doesn't know it. And you know what? I do get to make more of an impact and heal not just the people in the physical hospital. I'm helping people in the digital hospital, which is really planetary.
Right. You impact the entire hospispital. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely.
And 1 billion people.
Yeah.
A lot of hospitals. So let's talk about the macro trends. Clearly you guys know the markets really well in tech. And there's obviously a lot of buzz these days about AI. How are you guys? Let's take them one at a time. Number one, cyber, right? And how is the talent? You mentioned there's still a backlog. Are we going to see that sort of minimize a little bit or get to a better place because of AI? Or how do you view that trend of cyber and where we're going from here?
Yeah, I can tell you my quick view, and I have AI top of mind because yesterday it was a privilege enough to spend some time in a room with Sam Altman from OpenAI. He was here in Toronto and he gave a talk and he said something multiple times quite powerful around AI, that it's a tool, not a creature. And so how do we use this tool for good? How can we, things where we have problems today, the world's to-do list is massive. How do we apply this to give us speed, to give us decision-making capabilities, to automate and to modernize the way we work? So in my mind, the companies that I really think are doing great right now when it comes to cyber are ones that have AI embedded in it, have machine learning embedded in it. CrowdStrike, Halcyon, you've got these great companies, stuff coming out of Microsoft Azure, where you're now not looking for the needle in the haystack manually. You're using tools to make things a lot faster. If your credit card was compromised, do you want Helen going through one by one, or do you want the AI? I'm just asking. That's why when you personalize cyber, people's answer changes. Like if you just like for crime, anything, do you want them using the best tools possible to get to the right answer as quickly as possible? That's where I think AI plays a role.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'll just follow up quickly, Jim, on that. I think that AI definitely plays a role in that, but what I'd love to see would be more education on AI in general, even for people who are not in tech, right? So, because there's a lot of fear created around it now, and understandably in some cases, but I think people should understand really what it does and how to use it properly, how to use it for good, right? Because again, we're talking about really like a superpower, right? You just compared Helen to like the AI doing it. So it really is like this superpower thing. But I think if we educate people on that a little further, I think it'll help. I think it'll help mitigate some of the fear, but also it does mean we do need a ton more cyber people, and there are a ton of openings, and I would like to see more people going into that field because I think there's a tremendous shortage there. So I think if you start to talk about those things, you can create a parallel conversation that can lead to more people going into that field as well.
Yeah.
Got it. And what about the tech talent marketplace in general? Are we seeing any, obviously there's been some slowdowns, some trimmings of workforces. Just be curious about how each of you see that forecast.
Yeah, as somebody who's actively recruiting, it means there's more supply, right? And so I don't think I could have got some of the talented individuals I had if there wasn't that correction in the marketplace. But I do believe that people are landing, and it's in different ways, different shapes, different forms. The one thing I do want to highlight that is a challenge for organizations is just about how people want to work. People are redefining the work contract now and saying, hey, I just spent 2 years at home, and it's not a bad gig, and I can do everything from here that I could do when I was sitting in the office. So I hear people making decisions around what kind of flexibility will be offered. And so if you're out in the marketplace, whether you've decided on your own or someone decided for you, that flexibility of where you work, how you work, that is certainly playing into the decision-making process.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, because that's the biggest change we've seen, right? As COVID has had that effect of people look at themselves differently, look at work differently. There are still opportunities out there, clearly. Yeah, there was a correction. We saw that with a lot of the major tech companies, but there are also still a lot of openings out there, right? And there are a lot of qualified people out there, and we just have to get them situated properly, but also talk to them, find out what it is that they want to do, because it's a different conversation now than it was 3 years ago, right? And COVID has a lot to do with that. But still, I think what's opened the door to is it's not just jobs are just you come in, you do this. We've sort of gotten away from that. It's like people want to know, like, well, really, what am I going to be doing? Who am I going to be working with? What's the culture about? How do you guys operate? Those become becoming much more important questions than just what's the gig, right? So we've gotten away from that to much more of a sort of personalized company feel, just an interpretation of what the policies are and how things are really going to work as a whole. I think those things are so important, and you can still attract people, and there are absolutely still jobs out there.
Got it. And what about on that remote work, Claudette? I'm just curious, is there a difference at all in the Canadian culture or expectations as opposed to the US?
From what I understand and what I read, I think different companies are coming at it differently. You've had, I think, one of your banking executives say, like, everybody get into the office. And then we've had people say, you know what, the word hybrid comes up a lot. And so that's the kind of happy medium. No, you can't be home 5 days a week, but maybe 3 days you're coming into the office, or the days that matter, the moments that matter, people being pulled in. Because I think about 20-year-old Claudette. Could I be working from home, not having, these, seasoned leaders to help with my coaching, my mentoring, so I don't know that it's going to work for everybody to be 100% home, or we're going to have to find ways to do that kind of, learning in the moment. But a lot of stuff happens in the hallways. A lot of stuff happens by the water cooler. Yeah. And so I do think I'm more of an advocate for hybrid, but I believe in the US, you're seeing that hybrid come to life. But you can tell me if there's a mass demand for everybody to get in the office. We're not having that in Canada. I think we've landed on a place where, it can't be all of one. So let's find that nice medium.
We are having that more here. Absolutely.
Yes.
More people want to go back to work. But I do think that there is, and I like your answer, because there's a chemistry to being at the office too, right? There's a socialization of work. And I think one thing the pandemic did was it sort of robbed that socialization of work, collaboration, teamwork, effort, everyone working together, being able to knock on your boss's door and say, hey, I have an issue or a problem. When you lose those things, you do lose a little bit of humanity in the equation as well, right? And I think that's very important to make sure that that's still at the forefront. But I do like the hybrid thing, because there are advantages to being home. And some days you may need to be home, or, maybe childcare is easier that way. There's a lot of different advantages to doing it. I like the word hybrid. It's kind of turned into a dirty word around here as far as the US goes, because everyone's like, get back to work and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if that's being driven by commercial real estate, but whatever it is, there is a happy medium, I think, that can be found. And I think it's important, because I think both things have something to offer.
Yeah, I remember one of my employees in Singapore saying to me, I just love working from home because I get to swim at lunch, right? And I say to myself, do we want to take that thing away from him that's helping him physically, helping him mentally? And so maybe he's going to swim 2 days a week at lunch, and then he's going to have lunch with us in the office the other 3 days.
And then those swims are more valued, right?
That's right. That's right. That's right.
That's a really good point, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Let's see. As far as opportunities in tech, and then the challenges on the other side, how are you seeing those things, let's just say, in the short and medium term?
You want to kick it off, Alex?
Oh, sure. I'll do that one. Well, since Quintrix deals primarily with early talent, there's an interesting thing going on with that. A lot of the layoffs that happened and things like that when it came to tech, there are still a lot of entry-level positions that are open, because people are interested in that, because it's always going to cost less money, right? We used to have a joke at Quintrix back, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. People would come to us and go, you have anybody who's got 5 years of experience, knows Java, has this background, we would hire that person immediately. I said, yeah, those people are called employed. They didn't exist. You couldn't find them, right? That you already have them. You want more of them? You can't, because those people are getting jobs immediately, right? Because that's how high the demand was. So I think throughout this phase that we're going through, there's been some adjustment. There's been, a little bit of slowdown, Jim, honestly. But I think at the entry-level position, I think there's always interest. People are always fascinated with, like, who can we bring in? What kind of new talent can we see? What are these people going to be like? Are they going to get our culture and all that? There's something very exciting about that. So to me, as far as the trends that I see, and again, I only really deal in entry-level talent, we haven't really had an issue with that. I know that, maybe Mindlands has had issues also because they're dealing with placements, and maybe they're dealing with experienced people. But as far as we're concerned, our market is so niche in that we're dealing with entry-level IT, and there's always going to be a demand for that, right?
Yeah, I would just say don't sleep on the people that are already in your organization. There's a lot of people who are doing a job and they're looking over to the right and the left and saying, what does it mean to get into like marketing? Or how do I go into cyber? I used to get people coming to me every week saying, how do I get in? How do I get started? And so creating programs, sometimes you're going to build, sometimes you're going to buy. And so you can build within your own organization and create that capacity. We have a program right now with a local college where we created this. There was all these jobs out there. There were specific entry-level roles. So we created curriculum. And in 4 months, you not knowing anything about cyber today, in 4 months, you can be an entry-level analyst.
Yeah.
And you can do vulnerability scanning, and you can do cyber literacy training, and you can help with, eyes on glass, 24/7 operations type roles. And so that's, instead of saying, hey, we got to go find these people or steal them because you have the musical chairs where people are just going from company to company and then getting recycled, bring more people in the pipeline. And sometimes they'll be outside, sometimes they'll be inside your company.
Got it. Okay, great. This has been a great conversation. I know the future is bright when I hear of all this great stuff that's out there, and that you guys are tackling these challenges. Before we end, I just wanted to ask you about a couple quick things. One, Claudette, for leaders everywhere, what's one tip they should know about cyber and protecting their enterprises?
Yeah, every person in the company at every level can be a target. And sometimes organizations protect the top and forget about the middle and the people on the front lines. And so I've seen many cases where it's the executive assistant that gets breached to get to the CEO. So everybody needs protection, and you have to democratize how you train and equip people for cyber war, because we are at war when it comes to cybersecurity.
Great. And for both of you, what's one tip on how to attract and retain tech talent going forward?
Well, that's a good one. I would say the first thing is be open-minded and don't be afraid to express exactly what your company's culture is. You want to open up to people. You want to make sure that they feel like they have a place. I think that's important. We had a situation where we were bringing people into this one company, and they were literally, they made it through the retention, as I mentioned to you guys, like 92%. They got to the first year, and then they were leaving. So they were leaving like a year and 6 months, right? And the client called us and said, what's with your people? And they're leaving us, and what's going on? And my response to them was, well, what's going on over there? Why are they staying there for a year and a half, and then leaving? Something else is going on, because now they've got experience and they're leaving because they have other offers, and there must be something going on there culturally that's not a fit for them. Of course, obviously the client took this as like a attack on him at first. And I said, no, I'm being dead serious about this. You need to think about and be open and honest with yourself about what are you doing to create an environment for your people. Are you being honest with them? Are you being honest with yourself? Are you sharing? Are you being inclusionary? All of those kinds of things to make sure everyone wants cultural fit. Well, you know what? People who have jobs want cultural fits as well. Make sure that you are completing, not that just they fulfill your equation, but are you helping fulfill their equation as well?
Yeah, I love that. I was going to say, see it, be it. If I don't see it, I don't think I can be it. And so when you look at the team, what does it reflect? Does it reflect the society that you live in? When I go places and there's no women in the room, or there's nobody that looks like me. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to start from scratch. So be really like, just check and challenge. We're not trying to hit numbers. We're trying to cast wide nets and get the best and the brightest. And the best and the brightest can't be on one school, on one block, in one area, in one city. So
Absolutely.
cast wide nets so that when people are looking and you think that you're interviewing and hiring them, you might be surprised to hear that they're interviewing and hiring you as the employer.
Yep.
Great insights. Okay, this has been a really great conversation overall. We usually end with a saying or a quote or a poem. So ladies first, Claudette, share with us something.
I was thinking of doing an original poem, but then something came to me. I was inspired by this conversation. And there's a lot going wrong with the world today. I think we acknowledge that, whether it's the economic climate, where it's societal pressures, there's so many things going on. I talked about, the cyber crime and the quadrupling of that, and you'll think everything is wrong, but there's a lot we should be proud about. And so my quote today is something that I have posted in my washroom. I look at it it's right beside my mirror. It's just to remind me when we're trying to think about how bad things are yesterday, and do we want to be a prisoner of the past or a pioneer of the future? That is the quote I'd like to share with you today. And the answer should be pioneer in the future.
Better be.
Better be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great one. Alex, go ahead.
Mine is short and sweet. It goes back to my entrepreneurial days of about 10 years ago. And it is very simple. And it's just know what you don't know. I know that sounds silly, but when you think about it, as long as you know that you don't know something, you're going to ask. You're going to get educated about it. You're going to inquire with people who do know. You're going to surround yourself in a room full of people who can help you. And I think that applies to, everything. God, politicians need to know what they don't know more than half the time, right? But as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a co-founder, whatever it may be, as long as you know what you don't know and you're okay with that, you'll always ask. Always ask, always be learning. Goes back to the same thing that I said before, right? Make sure that that's your mantra, because every day you can learn something. That's very important.
Great. Well, both of those were really, really fun and excellent and thoughtful. So I just want to thank you guys. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please like it, leave a review, and subscribe. See you soon.